That's a good song, right? Okay. Justice. I'm going to tell you, I like this topic. I like this series. I like this as a core value. But I think sometimes we kind of misdefine justice. If you were born, at least in the United States, probably at least early 80s and before, you grew up in school pledging to the flag and justice for all. And we said it all the time. We said it with passion, even though at the age of 6 we may not have known what we were saying. But nowadays, I kind of feel like we don't hear justice except for they'll get theirs, and that's justice. We've heard of the justice system all throughout the news this week, right? We hear about justice and crime and punishment, and that's when we hear about justice, and that's the end of it. And I've had moments in my life where I have wanted justice. I was thinking about one this morning that I'll just tell you briefly. I woke up one morning, like 4 o'clock in the morning, to my neighbor's alarm clock going off. It was so loud.
You've heard this, haven't you?
And I was like, what is happening? And I just laid in bed stewing, going, that's just rude. They better turn that off. That is unbelievably not okay. They didn't turn it off for like an hour. It just went on. 4 o'clock in the morning. So I kind of had a bad day that day. I was really grumpy for a little bit that day. But I thought, okay, well that was what happened today. The next day, you know what happened? The same thing. 4 o'clock in the morning, the alarm went off and I was like, unbelievable. They are doing that again. They just need to turn off that alarm clock. The next day, by this time I was just infuriated. I was ready, and I was sitting up in bed, and I was listening out the window to see if I could tell what direction it was coming from, because I was going to find the house. The fourth day, I actually got dressed and went, just walked along the block, and I couldn't hear it. I was like, this is just. Fifth day, I got a little worried. I was like, somebody might be dead in their house. Now this is a mission. I'm no longer wanting justice. I'm thinking there could be something wrong. This went on for like 2 weeks. I thought somebody must be on vacation, right? I didn't know. I literally went to the next block because it sounded like it was coming up over the houses. I was going to find the alarm clock. It was my mission. And I didn't know if I wanted to be caring and compassionate or if I just wanted to give somebody my mind after 2 weeks of this torture. So one morning, now I'm getting conditioned to this neighbor's alarm clock going off, and I wake up at like 3:58. My eyes are wide open. I'm ready for it. And I'm just angry already. The alarm hasn't even got off, and I'm angry. 4 o'clock, sure enough, there's that sound. But at the same time, my alarm clock light went on. And I was like, what? It was my alarm clock. The lowest volume ever. It was my alarm clock going off for 2 weeks. Causing me insanity throughout my whole day. Can you believe that? And so it went off and I was like, and I just silently reached up and turned it off, and Christine, who I'd woken up every morning at 4 going, do you hear that? Christine, also conditioned to wake up, said, oh, no, you didn't. I'm not even kidding. And I say that because I think sometimes we walk around thinking justice needs to happen. It needs to happen now. We completely forget that we have a say in the matter. Completely forget that there's something that we can do, and maybe we need to stop blaming everybody else and turn around and look in the mirror a little bit. So that's where I want to take you today as we talk about justice, because I am one that says, yeah, somebody needs to do something. And I love that song we started out. God said, I did something. I created you. Simply put, justice is making things askew right again. That's justice. It requires us to recognize what's askew, and then it requires us to take action to make something right. To acknowledge that something's wrong, and then do something about it. We know justice and the criminal justice system as retributive justice. Right? Somebody did something, there's crime, there's punishment. The punishment needs to be crime. That's the justice that we often think of or talk about. But when Jesus talked, and he gave his mission, which was filled with justice, he didn't use retributive justice. He used some different kinds of justice. I want to explain it to you. He read in Luke 4:18, he read his mission statement, which he got directly from the book of Isaiah. Now I'm going to parse it out as I read it. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. That's distributive justice. Saying we need to all have enough. And that's restorative justice. Saying what's been taken from you should be restored. Distributive justice is saying everybody has their fair share. Restorative justice is saying what was wounded or broken is now made whole or healed. That's the words Jesus spoke from. He sent me to proclaim release of the captives. Again, restorative justice, but also procedural justice. Procedural justice looks to make sure that things are equitable and fair. That things need not just money, but we in life, that things are fair. And recovery of sight to the blind, restorative. Let the oppressed go free, restorative and procedural. To proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, that's distributive justice. And you think, what's that? How is that economic justice? Because the year of Lord's favor was the year of Jubilee. And in the year of Jubilee, every 7 years, all debts were canceled. Everything was made right again. Cha-ching! There's not, you think about that, I'm going to get into it later, but the disparity of income in the United States today and the systems that are creating abject poverty every 7 years were wiped away. How cool was that? And Jesus said, it's my mission to proclaim it. See, he came to bring justice. Sometimes we forget about that, and then in the name of Jesus do something completely different. In spite of the fact that Jesus stated his mission, so many people who claim to follow Jesus and in fact make their most treasured identity that says a Christ person or Christian, in spite of the fact so many that call themselves that say the homeless are homeless because of choices they've made, it's their problem. They don't deserve my money. I worked too hard to give out charity. The same people that say, I claim Christ, refuse to see his mission statement when they say criminals are in jail because of what they've done. In fact, we need stiffer sentences. We need to be harder on crime. Forgetting the fact that our legal system is broken to pieces. And do you know that... Oh, I'm going to get into this stat later. Never mind. I'll tell you later. We'll wait for it. The same people that say, I follow Christ, close their ears to his mission statement and say, the uninsured are uninsured because they're lazy. They just want a handout. Why should my hard money go to save them or help them? They need to get a job. And then those same people say the poor are poorer because they aren't smart enough. Or they need to get a second and third job. Do you know it takes 3 jobs for some people to just maintain poverty level? And people who call themselves Christians are completely ignoring the mission of Christ that says that's not justice. And instead we say they need to get an education that they can't afford. They need to get a job that they can't get. And it's their problem, it's not ours. It's somebody else's alarm clock. But it's not. They completely overlook the fact that according to Jesus, his mission was our mission too. Jesus said it quite plainly in the scripture that Charlene read today, and the words of Jesus introduced another form of justice. Yes, he finally did talk about retributive justice, but he did it in a way of those people claiming his name. If you tell me you love me, but you don't take care of these people, I never knew you. Now, the punishment is fitting the crime. Don't tell me you love me when you, with apathy, look upon the struggles of my people and you don't care, or worse yet, you care that they're trying to get out of their misery. Matthew 25, I was hungry and you did not give me food. I was thirsty and you did not give me something to drink. In the USA alone, and I'm going to talk about a lot of USA-centric things because we're here in the USA, but I'm going to tell you it goes throughout the world and sometimes even worse. In the USA alone, according to last year's census, there are over 500,000 people homeless in the United States. 500,000 people, 500,000 plus people are sleeping on the streets. And I hear daily people in the name of Jesus saying it's not their problem. In fact, looking with disdain on the people saying they've chose it. There's something wrong there. America's top 10%, just the 10%, average more than 9 times the income of the bottom 90%. I know, it's disturbing. America's top 1% average 90 times the income of the rest of the 99%. And you want to say, good for them. I'm sure they worked hard to get that. They're probably super smart individuals. Well, maybe, I doubt it, but except for the fact that in America, 1/4 of Americans working make less than $10 an hour. And the people who are making 90% of the income are saying, don't you dare raise that minimum income level. Because it would affect me. It's not sustainable, by the way, to live on $10 an hour in today's world. The top 10% are fighting to keep all they have and not give 1 penny up. But that doesn't let us off the hook because sometimes we think that what we have, we can't afford a penny either. And I start to find that when we give, we receive so much more. When we live in a life of generosity, we begin to believe that Jesus' mission statement works. Because back last week we talked about Ubuntu. What happens to me happens to you. If I lift myself up, I lift you up. If I lift you up, I lift me up. Same goes. When we refuse to give a handout or a help up, we're refusing the same for ourselves. In a 2015 study, experts surmised that 13% of Americans live below the poverty line, below it. 1/3 live just at that line, just at that line of poverty. That's 100 million people unable to sustain an income that will keep them fed and sheltered. And I hear people all the time saying, it's not my problem. And usually those people are people who claim the name of Christ. I was hungry, and you did not feed me. I was thirsty, and you did not give me drink. It's time for us to do something. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me in. There are more than 200 immigrant prisons in the United States. Privately owned. It's a business. Immigrant prisons in the United States. We have a whole industry built on incarcerating, detaining strangers who are looking for refuge, who are looking for opportunity, who are looking for restoration, and we say it's time to lock them up. We hear nightmares of people going to another country and for one reason or another finding themselves locked up abroad, and we think that's like the worst nightmare ever. And then we turn around and we do it on our land time and time and time again. And so many don't even bat an eye at the idea that children are being ripped away from their parents and put in cages and not even trapped, so that one day, when this twisted system gets fixed, we can't even bring a child to their parents. When we sit back and in the name of Christ, I've heard people say, well, they shouldn't have come illegally. Obviously, they're terrible parents, or they wouldn't have brought their kids across the border. I was a stranger. You did not invite me in. Worse. Jesus says, you just didn't invite me in, go away, I didn't know you. We're locking them up. It's time for us to do something. I was naked and you did not give me clothing. I was sick and you did not take care of me. When the Affordable Care Act was implemented in 2013, there was an astounding 18% of the people of the United States uninsured. That was cut almost in half. And I heard people, time and time and time again, who claim the name of Christ saying, how dare they? Why do I have to pay for their insurance? People who couldn't go to the hospital in the most wealthy nation in the world were finally getting health care, and people in the name of Christ were angry about it. I don't get that. I was sick, and you didn't visit me. You didn't take care of me. Do you know that I know personally, I have met and heard the stories of 3 men in Folsom this year alone that have died on the street in homelessness. And we won't hear about it in the news, but it's happening. It's time for us to do something. I was naked and you didn't clothe me. As things go, we also, our country makes up much less than half the world population, uses about 70% of the energy in the world. There are nations, because of our irresponsibility toward the earth, who are losing their lands. There are electronic disposal sites where children across the world are getting cancer on our junk. Jesus didn't even say anything about, you made me sick. He just said I was sick and you didn't care. It's time for us to do something. I was in prison. You did not visit me. The ACLU posted the following staggering statistics. Despite making up to close to 5% of the global population, the U.S. has nearly 25% of the prison population. Since 1970, our incarceration population has increased 700%. And it hasn't lowered the crime rate, by the way, but it doesn't matter, because people feel like justice is being done, not at their own expense. 2.3 million people are in jail right now, in prison today. 1 out of every 3 black boys born today can expect to go to prison in his lifetime. 1 out of every 7 Latinos can expect to go to prison in his lifetime. That's a far cry from 1 out of every 17 white boys. Now, that has nothing to do with the fact that black boys make or cause more offenses. It's about the same. Studies have proven the crime rate there's no disparity of ethnicity when it comes to crime. It's the punishment that the disparity exists. There's twice as many people sitting in local jails awaiting trial, presumed innocent, than there are even in the federal prison system right now. Black and Latino people make 29% of the U.S. population and 59% incarceration. One study found that while black youths make up 14% of the youth population, they make up 53% of the minors transferred to adult court for offenses against persons, despite the fact that the white and black youth make up nearly the equal percentage. I was in prison, and you didn't visit me. It's time for us to do something.
Absolutely.
Yesterday in Washington, D.C., there was a trans visibility march. The hope is to add a more positive time of recognition in addition to the Transgender Day of Remembrance. We hold observation of the Transgender Day of Remembrance every November to bring awareness of the trans people who have been killed throughout the world due to violence because specifically of their transgender identity. Last year in America alone, there were 29. Already this year, there have been 19. The fatal violence disproportionately affects transgender women of color. And that intersection of racism, sexism, homophobia, biphobia, transphobia conspire to deprive them of employment, housing, healthcare, and other necessities and barriers that make them vulnerable. It's time for us to do something. Just this week, I spoke to a couple. Their daughter has recently, well, both daughters actually have recently come out as lesbian. And they sat in their church horrified as they were told by a visiting speaker, gay and lesbian people are incapable of loving Jesus. It's time for us to do something. But see, that's the thing. We can't just recognize that problems exist. And I could probably spend another 3 hours talking about unjust problems in our world and our society. But the thing is, you can't just hear that it's wrong and be done. You can't just only sing about it. Reflection MCC is in this community right now because I believe there are justice issues that we can be a part of solving, fixing, doing. But it can't just be at the church either. It has to be at each individual level. If you say, God has changed my life, the mission and vision and teaching and life of Christ have changed me, then you must change the world. Because that's how you prove you know Christ. Otherwise, he says, you had all these opportunities. You didn't. You didn't. Depart from me. I never knew you. It's time for us to do something. It's not your neighbor's alarm clock. Wake up. Because there are things that you can do that nobody else can. And the problems are heartbreaking, but what would be more heartbreaking is if we walked along in apathy, feeling hopeless. Because we're not. The Creator of hope has planted a seed in us, has given us hands and feet and ears and a mouth and vision. We're here for a purpose. It's time for us to do something.